only thing certain at this time is uncertainty. Imagine walking out of a store, walking to your car after a shopping trip, and turning your head to see a truck barreling 40 miles an hour right at you with no way to react. That's where this story begins. There was a mother and her two sons, 14 months apart, that had gone to Walmart to get a 1-inch paintbrush. And as they were headed back to the car, the youngest of the two boys, who always had an excitement and vigor for life, was a few feet ahead of his mom and his brother. He was excited to get home to put that 1-inch paintbrush to work. So he got to the car first, put his hand on the handle, and waited for his mom and brother to catch up for his mom to unlock the doors. While this was happening, a truck pulled up in front of the Walmart that they had just exited. And the driver and the middle passenger got out. The passenger all the way to the right felt the truck moving backwards. So he moved over to put his foot on the brake, as any of us would have done. But instead he hit the gas. Combination of shock and force threw him up onto the steering wheel. And before you know it, he was catapulting 40 miles an hour across the parking lot. Now I know you can see where this is headed. This family was parked in an end spot. He got to the median, went up and over the median, went up and over the tree in the median, and continued on to hit this family's car where this boy was holding onto the handle. It threw him to the ground, ran over him and tumbled him, tore his spleen, left a tire track scar on his stomach, and continued on to sever his left arm completely from his body. This was August 10th, 115-degree day in Phoenix, and they're laying on black asphalt with complete catastrophe. What started as a simple trip to get a 1-inch paintbrush created a massive amount of uncertainty for this family. Uncertainty at that moment on whether or not this boy would live. Uncertainty at that moment as to whether or not this arm would ever be reattached. And uncertainty as to what the future would hold to recover for this entire family. Fortunately, his guardian angel walked out of Walmart right at that time. It was a nurse who watched the entire thing happen. Ran over, she realized that this was a life and limb scenario, and she immediately went into action. She put pressure on the wound and stopped the bleeding to save his life, and simultaneously instructed some innocent bystanders to run inside, grab a cooler from the Walmart, and fill it with ice from the convenience center to get his arm on ice within minutes to give him hope of potentially being able to not only live, but have a functioning arm at some point. First ambulance that was called got into a car accident. So as if the day wasn't bad enough, there was a little more uncertainty created as to how long it would be to actually get into the place where they could get recovery. At the time, when they actually got him into the hospital, it's always life and limb. They fixed the internal bleeding and then went on the path to figure out what is next. There was only 3 surgeons in the valley in Phoenix at the time that were even capable of performing such a surgery. One of them was out of town. One of them had just worked a 12-hour day and said, I can't take on the surgery. And the last one had also worked a 12-hour day, but said, this is a kid. I got to give him a fighting chance. Fortunately, this doctor was aware enough and intentional enough to recognize that despite the uncertainty, he had to go into action and he had to plan, recognizing this wasn't a 1, 2, 3, or 4 surgery ordeal. This was going to be a 5, 10, 15, 25 surgery ordeal. And that's if the reattachment was going to be successful. Over the next 2 weeks, there was a number of surgeries, and he went in and he was flagging and tagging nerves and veins and muscles to be able to go into and use in a future date. And 4 months later, they went in to reattach the nerves and really be able to focus on getting feeling and movement back into this boy's arm. 19 hours, the surgeon stood by the table with unbelievable conviction. He took 1 break to take a handful of M&Ms and a potty break. And other than that, he was focused vigilantly on what needed to happen. It was 4 months later that I remember feeling my hand for the very first time. It was 4 months later that I was able to wiggle my fingers for the very first time. It was 4 months later that hope was restored, that I would be able to grow up and live a happy, healthy, and productive life. And uncertainty at that moment started to shift to certainty, but there was still uncertainty in the certainty of what the future would hold, because this was only a beginning state of the process of recovery. Now, I know you weren't expecting it to go there today. And yes, I have a very unique story. But what I've learned in all my time of doing this, and all my time of speaking, and all my time of coaching individuals to get unstuck into the next level, is that we all have a unique story. What's important is that we pause and recognize what are the lessons we can extract from those stories, how do we become aware of them, and how do we become intentional with applying them in our lives? And how do we be able to tap into the collective wisdom and lessons of all of those around us to shorten the curve for all of us to grow? One of the most important lessons I learned in that time is to not get stuck by what had happened to me, but get moved by what I could do with it. I learned to not get stuck by what had happened to me, but get moved by what I could do with it. We are in a time right now where we are collectively in the same story. And this story is riddled with uncertainty. A little over a month ago, COVID-19 came barreling at us with little or no time to react. And this uncertainty has manifested in a huge way. We're uncertain about whether or not COVID-19 was real and how it was going to impact us. We were uncertain as to how this was going to look for our finances and our health and our safety. We were uncertain about what this was going to look like and how it would spread. And uncertainty manifests as stress, anxiety, fear, and scarcity mindsets. Hence, why toilet paper became the most popular product in the United States. So what we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes is 3 primary things that I've seen bubble up over the last few weeks and how to actually navigate through them. Because that's what we have to do at the moment, is navigate through uncertainty and get ourselves back on track. And many people are experiencing varying levels of fatigue right now. And these are caused by 3 primary things as I've seen. First, we have to recognize that what we're experiencing is a collective trauma. That is bringing up profound grief, loss, panic over livelihoods, panic over loss of lives or loved ones. We're grieving the loss of life as we knew it. We're grieving the loss of jobs. We're grieving the loss of financial security and the ability to plan and have stability and any element of control in our lives. Our nervous systems are literally barely coping with the sense of threat and vigilance for safety. And many people are balancing between looking forward and then feeling numb, frozen, and stuck, shutting down in response to it all. People are literally trying to just survive poverty, fear, retriggering of trauma, retriggering of other mental health difficulties at the moment. And so my first step to all of us is that we must feel in order to heal. We have to recognize that the heaviness and the emotion that we're all experiencing is real, and now is not the time to suppress. Now is the time to recognize what's happening and give ourselves and those around us permission and grace to process what's actually happening. If we don't give ourselves that space, we will not move through this. Second, we have to recognize that we've been knocked out of autopilot. Dr. Zimmerman back in 1986 did a phenomenal study that came up with a stat that I love around this concept of awareness. Our minds process 11 million bits of information per second, but we're only consciously aware of about 40. And so what that means is that we are largely led by the unconscious, that we are largely a product of our environments, our conditioning, our patterns, our habits, that we are actually not actively making decisions, that we aren't consciously aware in the things that we are doing. And so when COVID-19 gets hit and all of a sudden we're knocked out of autopilot, our habits and our formations just go out the window. We no longer can get up and go through our day, go through the car ride, get ready for work and show up at the office and not realize what had happened the prior 2 hours. And for many of us that are lucky enough to have our jobs and keep them during this time, we're working in the confines of our home while simultaneously trying to balance all of our family needs and childcare and learning new technology and distance learning and figuring out what to eat. And our daily lives have been completely uprooted. And we're having to figure out all these new dilemmas and thought processes that are going through our worlds. Like, do I need to worry about the cardboard packages that are being delivered by Amazon on my porch? Is food delivery really safe? Do I need to disinfect anything there? What about my groceries? Do I need to disinfect that? How do I stay in shape? What does my pattern and routines look like? Can I hug my kids? Can I be with my family that's outside of these 4 walls? When are we going to get back to normal? We don't understand what this is looking like. So the reality of it is we are experiencing decision fatigue because we have nothing to rely on in terms of autopilot moments anymore. We have to make active decisions at every minute of every day right now just simply to get through, and we don't know what the world looks like 6 hours from now. The beautiful opportunity that exists in this, though, is that it's our opportunity to take back control of our lives, shift our unconscious to the conscious, shift our led states to the aware states, and take the ability to recognize and take toll on our lives historically, what was contributing to our lives, what was taking away and draining our energy from our lives, and where possible, do an analysis of what we want that to look like moving forward. Get really, really clear on the things that are important to us and the actions we can take to control those. And that's what we have the ability to do right now, as long as we process and feel, which was the first step. Lastly, we're feeling an immense amount of pressure to do more and be more right now. There are messages all over the place. Like if you don't come out of this with a better skill or a better thing, that it's not for lack of time, it's for lack of discipline. And I want to be the person to say something different than that. Yes, this is a time for positivity. Yes, this is a time for opportunity. But if we don't feel and heal, and if we don't recognize how we can establish new patterns and new habits in our lives that are draining and causing fatigue, then it doesn't matter. We can't focus on anything proactive and future focused and objective. And so one big thing I really want to focus on right now is let's get the word should out of our language. A number of my clients that have come to me over the last few weeks and been like, Brian, I should be able to get up and just work out. I should be able to shut off the TV after one episode. I should be able to make good choices with my food. I should be able to be more patient with my children. I should be good at helping with the distance learning. I should be able to balance all these things and still be crushing it at work. Well, guess what? There is no precedent for what we are experiencing in the globe right now. Should doesn't even exist. And should automatically implies that whatever you're doing is not good enough. And so I want us to remove should from our language and replace it with could. What we have to do is focus on progress, not perfection. And replacing should with could allows us to change those languages to say, what could I do differently tomorrow? What could I do to get myself moving? What could I do to make changes in my diet? What could I do to manage and balance all of this chaos in the world right now? And so how do we manage through that? But let's make sure that we remove should and replace with could. We are certain that this is our new reality, at least for now. But now that our uncertainty has shifted to certainty, we know COVID-19 is not going away. We know there's impact. We know this is happening. We're now having uncertainty in our certainty. We don't know what the future holds. And that creates and manifests as fear for many people. So to close this out today, let's touch on some components of fear and how do we move through this. I read a phenomenal book a few months back called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Dr. Susan Jeffers. And she outlines that there's really 3 layers to fear. Level 1 fears are those that happen to us: aging, becoming disabled, retirement, being alone, children leaving home. And she lists a whole bunch of examples. Level 2 fears are things that are inner states of mind rather than exterior situations. So things like rejection, being conned, success, helplessness, feeling stuck. But level 3 fears, which are the root of all fears, is what we really need to focus on. And it's the question, can I handle it? And the truth is, if you knew you could handle anything that came your way, what would you possibly have to fear? And she outlines that the answer is absolutely nothing. So here is one thing I am absolutely certain of. I am 100% certain that we can handle this. I am 100% certain that we will all be okay. And I am 100% certain that we will be stronger and better off because of this time together. So I want us to focus on a couple things. 1, give yourself grace and permission to process. If we don't feel, we don't heal. 2, recognize you've been knocked out of autopilot and have an opportunity to take back control of your life. 3, eliminate the word should and replace it with the word could. And 4, know that you can and we will handle this together. So let's not get stuck by what is happening to us, but instead get moved by what we can do with it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you today. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch and helping any of you that I have the ability to do.